Hello everyone, this is Brian Wargo from the Allegheny Plateau Audubon Society. I'm going to take you through the history of the APAS and the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch. We're getting ready to start our season, and so I figured I would take you through some of our history. And I am the current president of the Allegheny Plateau Audubon Society, and I'm also the Saturday counter at the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch. So I'm going to go through and tell you some of the history. Where did I get my information from? Well, the main source of data are interviews. Over the last week or two, I've interviewed many of our more senior members. I looked through all of our newsletters that I had access to. Hopefully I'm going to be getting more, so this will become a little bit more exhaustive. Newspaper articles. If we had articles written about the Allegheny Plateau Audubon Society or the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch, I was able to use those to tease out some information. And there's legal documents, and if I just talk to enough people and they corroborate each other's stories, we can use that as a reasonable timeline. And that's what I'm going to make over here. This is an early version of a timeline that I'm making of our history, and I'm going to be asking you for help. I also used electronic files and our old website. Our old website contained little nuggets of information that were useful. Let me take you through a little bit of the data that we could use. Some of it's public knowledge, like you can look at deeds for properties, things of that nature. It's all public knowledge, and they have dates, and these dates are too small for you to see, but I can get them, and then I have that exact date. I can use that. From our old website, there's statements that we've written, some of the legal documents that we have from our incorporation. The APAS was founded in 1984, and we now have the documentation for that. And I might as well read, what we are all about. We are dedicated to the protection and understanding of the earth and all its inhabitants. Through our series of meetings, programs, and outings, we hope to reach individuals of all ages to understand, respect, and protect the earth. Through such activities as the breeding bird survey, raptor counts, Christmas bird count, and outings, members can do field work and learn firsthand about the wonders of nature. And then it goes on to talk about the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch and so on, and involvement of younger people in our butterfly counts and dragonfly counts. And I wrote myself a little note here that said, I got this off of our mission statement, and I have first newsletter on site. Well, I don't know what that means. I wish I would have given it a better title, but regardless, that gives me a hint on where to go, because it really is difficult to go back and find the history 30 years, 25 years prior to the current date. All right, so here are some of our either founding members or members that were around back in the day. So let me introduce him. This is Gordy Senior. He's still one of our hawk counters. He's not a founding member. He came a little later, but he's so central to our Hawkwatch now. Deb Bowden chats. Jeff Payne, I think he's been here from the very beginning. Kevin George has been here from the beginning. Bob Stewart is our counter and compiler at the Hawkwatch. He's our Sunday person. He took the job from Mcconaughey, who Chi's been around since '89, and that's really when the hawk watching was in full swing, not at our current site, and that's what this picture is. This is our current meadow. Gene and Nancy Flement, who were longtime counters. Jim Rocco is still one of our counters, and you'll see he's been around for a very long time, as has Rosemary McGlynn. And Joe Sabo has been here pretty much from the beginning also. And these are some of the founding members or older veteran members that were at our work day, and I took advantage of talking to them. This is what our timeline is looking like, and it's been really difficult to make this, and I made it in Excel. And you might be saying, well, there's other programs out there that can do this for you. My problem is some of the programs that we used prior to when I got here are no longer available. So I'm going to use something like a spreadsheet. It's a little bit more tedious to do, but hopefully this will allow us to have this information passed on to the next generation. And I'm going to focus in on these pieces in a second, but each one of these is a year and an important date. Now we don't have all of the exact dates, so I'm going to be pleading to all of you that if you have exact dates for things or events that should go on that timeline, please let me know. There's lots of white space that we want to fill in. If we have an exact date, we put it. If we only know it to the month, then we just put, oh, it's either, December, maybe it was November, could have been January or February. If we just know it around the month, fine. Or the day or the year. I think we ended up taking care of the trees on the slope. I think that was 2020. It could have been the end of 2019 though. So if we don't know it exactly, we put it there until we can get an exact date. Someone might have an email, someone might have a letter that they wrote or something like that, and then we can go back and we can strengthen that timeline a little bit better. And these are just a couple examples that I put in. And I'll take you through the full timeline in a little bit more detail. And it's not completed yet. It's still work in progress. There's still some errors and so on. Let me show you. All right, so we'll start our timeline in 1984. The Allegheny Plateau Audubon Society begins. We have our charter certificate. Around the mid-85, probably about September of 85, we are counting hawks at Tussey Mountain at that time. And then we're not sure about this one. I think that's a problem. But anyhow, we're starting to do daily counts for the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch, but it's at the Gage property, which is very close to where we are now in our field, but it's just up the ridge just a little bit, a couple properties over. And the Gage property is no longer there. It's been bought by Mary Jane, and we do have that date. She was nice enough to give me the date for that. And the Allegheny Front is first mentioned in the September 1990 issue of Hawk Migration Studies. So that's another way that we have evidence of when things were happening, because we have that data that we collected for those days. And then again, HMS ends up reminding us that, hey, we're low on hours, and that's because we're moving to the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch. So we're going to stop at Tussey and move to the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch, which would have been the Gage site there. And Mary Jane remembers the first time she met Tom Dick and also Colonel Gage sitting on their porch together. By 91, we're collecting data, and we have 512 hours for the fall of 1990. So look, we're already establishing as a very serious hawk site all the way back then. And we're using green sheets, and I'll show you what those look like later on. Colonel Gage passes, his son takes over, but there were some liability issues he was concerned about, so kind of get off his property, and one of our counters, Dave Esridge, finds what's called the Coben site, and that's around 1995. Chi Mcconaughey helps clear some trees. We used that for Hawk Watch for about 2 years. And then around 97, the Dick family purchases our current Hawk Watch, and we start to have a preliminary Hawk Watch in the spring and in the fall. So at the same general time, the Dicks register the wetlands, which is a vital part and piece of the APAS. And big article comes out in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in 97. By the way, I took off the lines here, but this is 97, 98. There are 12 lines separating these. So where the dot is located, it's pretty accurate. If we need those, I just cut this up for illustrative purposes on this particular presentation. All right, I wanted to point something out. I put this in as one of our records. This is a record low. 1999, we only had 15 bald eagles during the 98 season. So this is right before 99, right? That's the end of the fall season. We start our butterfly counts around 2000. 2000 is going to be our first NA, National North America Butterfly Association count that we're going to be part of for many years. We just finished that in July. Owl banding starts in 2000. Mary Jane buys the Gage property, and that is right after 9/11. So that's an easy way to remember that. We have some other important dates here. Our first entry into hawkcount.org is in 2002, and I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, April 20th. And we were one of the very first hawk watches to really use the new electronic system online, which we still use today, which everyone uses now. But Tom and many of the founders felt that it was important to get in on that right away. And that's about that time we formally got our nonprofit status. The golden eagle that is sculpted around 2003, that arrives up in the field there. Lewis woodpecker, and here's Chuck, Jeff, Tom, and Janet. Kate St. John are all part of that witnessing process, and it's the first of this woodpecker in Pennsylvania. Janet and Karen Jackson start interning under Bill Judd, who is going to end up retiring from hawk counting because of eye problems. For those of you that have been to the Hawk Watch and sit at the largest bench down on the hillside there, the Gene and Nancy Flement bench, they built that back in 2005. Bob Stewart gets listed as an observer. Powder mill in the Golden Eagle study. This is a little jumbled here. I'll have to make some more room. So we have Golden Eagle research at the Allegheny front. Remember, Trish Miller, Todd Katzner are going to be there. Jeff Retta and Chris Payne participate in the World Series of Birding, and that's when Jeff becomes a real star. Ed Gordy Jr. Gets us a grant. Tom, Sally, Laura Jackson, Kim Moore are going to end up meeting with Ed Rendell. This is really when we have the fights going on around the APAS against big wind coming in, and we're very concerned about that interfering with the migration and possibly chopping up our eagles, so that's a problem. Chris Payne builds a duck blind at the wetlands, so that's around 2009, and that was for his Eagle Scout project. Chris still comes up to the Hawk Watch, or will go out with us to the wetlands. I first arrived at the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch for my first time in 2009, so I put that down. And you can see there's lots of white areas, so we're going to end up filling these pieces in as people give me more information. This is when we first set the Eastern Golden Eagle record at the Hawk Watch. And for those of you that remember, Somerset Lake was drowned, taken all the way down because it was deemed unsafe. It's now being filled. And, as we get closer and closer to the current day, we have easier records. This is back in 2015. Bob, myself, and one of our high school students ends up helping to enter old data into Hawk Count. And we set the one-day eagle record for the Eastern Flyway at 74. This is when I became a Saturday counter, so that's an easy one to remember. And when the meadow parking lot of the Allegheny Front changed, we ended up realizing it was just too difficult to get in there with chainsaws ourselves, so we made some changes. There's a lot of interesting things. Junior Hawk Watcher program begins at the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch and is adopted by Humana, so it's now a national program, but it started at the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch. And Humana's visited us there Tom Dick receives his Lifetime Achievement Award from the Allegheny Plateau Audubon Society. I know this is jumbled. I'll have to make some more space, but the bat boxes are erected at the meadow at the Hawk Watch. And for those of you that remember, in I think it was 2018, we had the night presentations at the Hawk Watch. Around this time, we also start tagging monarch butterflies at the Hawk Watch. And, you know, we go on and on. And in the COVID days, right, that was a problem. And then some new things, and I'll put these on here also. But I wanted to point out that last season was the first season we didn't have a single northern goshawk. That's a first for our site. And then we get a Ventrek machine, and Chris Stick makes a major investment, and we're able to get the wetlands cut and open. And then, of course, those of you that haven't heard, the founder, Tom Dick, passes, you know, very recently. Hopefully we'll have some more information, maybe have a gathering, we're thinking in October. As information comes out, we'll send that out to you. And I put, and you'll see a picture of this later, our owl gets new eyes and feathers from Randy Fulment. And I put that on here because that might be one of those timeline or pieces on the timeline. We could say, hey, don't you remember? That's right when we got the owl updated. So those of you that have important dates, please send them to me, and we'll add them here. All right, let's go to the Hawk Watch and spend a little time reminiscing. This is what the old Humana green sheets look like. And we still use a very similar sheet today. But you'll notice up here, the year is 1989. So we've really been counting since 89. So quite some time. This is Ruth Sager, and there's her information. These sheets were either sent in or you could call them in on the phone. So that is a long time ago. Hawk Migration Association of North America. And this isn't, look, this is an older picture I took off the website, the old website. And, you know, some people kind of still look the same. Dave Darney still has his beard. Kevin George still has his long hair. Chee's never been one for smiling for pictures, but there's Gene Fulment and some others, Jim Rocco, Joe Sabo, and others. You know, but we started even before this. All right, so look, this is the new Hawkwatch field that they're standing in, and so we think that's going to be around 1997. So the sheet that I just showed you from 89 was at previous sites, and the gauge property, if you were to walk right through this tree line, you'd eventually hit into it. And there's a Coben site, which is down the ridge even further. And I think I skipped through those on the timeline. I should have spent a little bit more time there, but let's move on. All right, this is going to be a little bit more current. This is Mark Mcconaughey, and he's been up to the Hawkwatch. I know he was up, I think he was up in the spring, and I know he was up there last fall too. So he's still coming up, and he was the official counter in 2004. This is a different kind of sheet, but it's still the same thing, and you'd enter that in. And this is 2004, so not everyone really had a computer back in the day. So Mcconaughey had become the compiler, and he bought a computer just to be able to enter our data in. Those of you that don't know, Chi has always been a stickler for getting the data and getting it right and making sure our calls are right. So what he would do is he would let everyone count and then just call them at his house, and he would enter it in onto Hawk Count. And it's my understanding that Tony Barley also helped with that. Soon enough, everyone had a computer, and most people could do that on their own, most of our counters. All right, so how much data do we have at the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch, and who was counting back in the day? Well, I've gone down a rabbit hole for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, trying to figure all this out. So here's what we can do. We can take all of our data. Now, this is just one of our sheets for hawkcount.org. It goes to the right side here even further. If I printed this out, it would be 124 of these sheets. Okay. But you could see the very first, looks like our very first counter here is Dave Esridge, and then Ruth Sager, and this is the earliest data that we have. This also goes to the left side a bit, but I cut that out to put this in. Just a staggering amount of data. Those of you that might have met me or seen my other presentations, even during COVID, you know that I spend a lot of time dealing with data. I spend a lot of time with data with Humana, and so I took this on, and I'm not going to bore you with everything. Let me just give you a couple big ones. All right, so here's just a summary for the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch as it currently is, where we are now. So we have data before this, but this is just where our current site is from 1997, and we have 27,673 official counter hours. For those of you that don't know, there's always one official counter every hour at a hawk site. We have two sometimes, and you'll see I have to take care of that. But regardless, so there's going to be spotters, there's going to be other observers, there's going to be other people that are helping. But the official counter, that's the person who is in charge. There's been 27,000 hours of an official counter being there. Most likely there's many other support people, but that's a lot. During this time, we've counted over 250,000 raptors, 258,318 total raptors. Out of those, we've counted 6,001 golden eagles. So that's just a really big summary. Now, who is doing this? Well, I have all this information, and I'm not going to bore you with all of it, but let me show you a little bit. Let's go back to 1997 when we're really at our current level of counting. This is our counter lineup in 1997. Bob Gorsuch. When I met him, he was the Monday counter. This is probably in the 2000 teens. Bill Judd, Chi, Mcconaughey, Dean Job, Dave Estridge. Joe Sabo's a big part of getting everything going back in the day. Tom Dick, of course, Chuck Tagg, Chi and Marion, Mcconaughey, Dean and Phyllis Job, and then Sally Dick was on her own sometimes, and Rosemary McGlynn, who's still with us. Sometimes her and Sally would split the duties. So they were listed both as the official counter. And then, of course, Ruth Sager, who actually did, looks like, the most of anyone for that first year. Now, every year is going to be a little bit different. Let me just go to 1998 and show you some things are going to change. First of all, Tom Dick puts out a newsletter to everyone, and Pittsburgh Press starts covering this new Hawkwatch. Lots of people coming up. You know, there's going to be a little bit of an explosion of excitement there. So look, we still have some of our normal people. G and Marion, Bob Gorsuch, Ruth Sager, Tony Barley, Chuck Tagg, Bill Judd, Joe Sabo, Dean Job, Tom Dick, Sally Dick. But we start to get other people that are trying to account for taking a small segment of the total counting. Dave Esridge is still going to be a part of that. Chi on his own without his wife. We're going to end up putting the Mcconaughey's together later on. But Gene and Nancy are up there for 98 according to our data, and then some others. Jim Rocco, who's there right from the beginning. Ron Ravancic, Jim, and then we've got Dick Byer, Jeff Payne, Dave Darney, Retta Payne. Wayne's here, who's still with us and still helps out. And look, there's always Rosemary right there. Oh, you know what? I think I forgot to take some of these out. These 0%, they might have been for a day. I don't remember, but I have a much better inscription. This got a little out of hand here. Or these percentages were really low, so maybe they took a few hours and they were counted as a counter. Let me just jump right up to last year, and you'll see that we pretty much have our counters down to every counter takes a day of the week. So you've got Jim, Ed Senior, Deb, Rosemary, Brian Wargo, that's me, Dave Potter, Bob Stewart, and some support people were Erica Bauman. She was helping, taking half days. Wayne Sear would always pick up when we needed. Paul Fritz took a little bit of time for us, and whenever Kevin's around, if he's not counting somewhere else, he is often up at the hawk site. So this is what it looks like now. But so I don't have to go through every one of these. I tried to make a massive inscription of every counter that we've ever had at the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch, official counter. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be observers and spotters and so on. I didn't get to that. This is just the official counters, those that sign their name on the sheet or enter the data in the hawk count. So I spent an exorbitant amount of time trying to figure out how to make all of this into one graph, and this is what I came up with. And I'm going to use Excel for this, but let's go. All right, this is every counter who's ever counted even a single hour at the Allegheny Front Hawk Watch. All right, down here is the year, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. It goes chronological order all the way to, I have the spring of 2022 in here, but we're going to do the fall right now, so that's why we've got this big gap here. These are the total number of hours that we're counting, and back in the day we might not have had a spring count, or our fall count might not have been as much, but you know, if we get close to 1,000 during the fall and maybe another 400 during the spring, all right? So these are our counters at first that I've already gone through. You can see Dave Esserich was with Ruth Zager, Chi, Chuck Tagg, and then Bob Gorsuch. Look, Bob is going to be a part of this organization up until his death. But you could see he's this blue line that goes all the way over here. He didn't count as much during this period or this period, and then counted a lot more, made up many more hours, a significant chunk of our hours here, and he goes all the way over here. You could see G and Marion are going to end up being a very, very strong segment of the earlier hawk count, and we can go through. There's Dean Job. Joe Sabo is this light blue. Sally Dick occasionally is on her own. And Tim Fox, he's not counting that much, but he does it for about a season. And then some that have just, you know, either stepped in for us or just counted a smaller amount of hours. They're up here, and they're going to be maybe like blended in one of these peaks. So like this, I ended up starting to put little arrows, but it becomes a little bit distracting. But this is Rosemary and Sally that I pointed out when they counted together. They're this little red blurb right here. Okay. Tony Barley. Okay, he's going to be counting with us for some time. And then of course Tom Dick, the bedrock right here. Tom is going to be counting from the very beginning, and he's going to be counting all the way up to 2019. Jim Rocco, look at this. Look at Jim Rocco all the way to the beginning. He was here at the beginning, but he wasn't necessarily an official counter till about 98, 99. And remember, this is just up to 97, our current, where our current hawk site is. And then Gene and Nancy are this gold color. Dick Byer, and Rosemary McGlynn. Look, just been around with us ever since the beginning, and is still one of our primary counters. And Marion occasionally was on her own. Kevin, George, Ron, and there's Wayne down here. So we got Nancy Ott has taken some time here, the Carriers, and Dave Darney, you know, our owl bander occasionally might need to take a few hours for us. Some of these members I never got a chance to meet. Ken Byerly, the Judds, Bill and Vicky. Now, occasionally Bill will be on his own, so Bill will also be down here, but this is when it was entered in as Bill and Vicky Judd, this brown part, and Bill Judd is just right here. Okay, and then Ross Gallardi, the Cools. So this looks like this is when Probably Janet was working with Bill Judd, and then Janet sometimes on her own here. And then Jackson and Judd, and then Cool and Jackson, they would kind of work together. Tim Anderson was here for a bit. Jack Julian, our treasurer, if we need him to, he can go out there. Ed Gordy Senior, still with us, still one of our primary counters. And of course, Bob Stewart, who is our compiler and in charge of membership. And he's just made up an enormous part of our counting over the years, all of our hours. There's the Jacksons, there's Tom and Janet together as a couple, and then Neil Wolfenson, and then here's Joe Sabo with Ed Gordy Jr. So Joe is also on his own down here. Oh, that's my phone. Let me figure out how to shut that off. All right. And Ed Gordy Jr., Deb was with Peter Livengood. Peter won one of our highest awards in the Eagle Scouts. It is the highest award. And then Paul Fritz is up there. I hope I didn't miss anyone. Here's where I am. I come along later in the organization, but I'm still one of the primary counters. Dave Potter, Erica Bauman, and of course Deb. Deb is this peach color right here, and she's still one of our counters. So you can see our counters of today. We got Dave, myself, Deb, Ed Gordy Senior, Bob Stewart, Rosemary, and Jim Rocco. And Wayne certainly helps fill in when we need him to. So I hope this graph makes sense, but you can see all the layers of strata here that have made this Hawkwatch and this organization what it is. The people that are contributing just on the official counter piece. Remember, we have many other people that have been part of this organization that are integral to helping with all of this. This is just listed as the official counters. We have some Hawkwatchers that are up there all the time that just never have been the official counter, but probably have many hours just like this. It's just a neat inscription, a way to think of all this. But now I'm a data guy. I play with data a lot, numbers. I'm going to ask everyone, who do you think has the most hours out of everyone listed as an official counter? It's just as the official counter. Like Jim has been up there even before he was an official counter. Bob was up there for a year or two before he became a counter, just observing the birds and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everyone to think about, all right, who have the most number of hours? And if you look at this, you could see there's some real contenders. Whoever has the most amount of area, right, total length and width, and boy, look at Jim Rocco here. He is making up an incredibly big swath of area. Gene and Nancy, of course, do right above him. And then Rosemary, right? Bob Gorsuch, Tom Dick, and so on. So let's go to the next graph and I'll show you what I made. So this is their total number of hours. So if you happen to be watching this and you always wondered, I wonder how many hours I've been the official counter. Well, here you go. All right. Jim Rocco. And he's got close to 3,500 official counter hours at the Allegheny Front Hawkwatch. Those are official. Jim's always there. So if Bob's there, Jim's probably also there. He's just not the official counter. And then Bob Stewart is next. And then Rosemary McGlynn. Tom Dick, Ed Gordy Senior, Gene and Nancy, Bob Gorsuch, Deb, Gia and Marion, Mcconaughey. I'm there. Now look, here's one of the problems though. Look at Rosemary. Rosemary is probably under Tony at that point, or maybe she's splitting the day. I don't know, and it's hard for everyone to remember. So I'm gonna condense this whole thing down here. But if you were ever an official counter, even for a day, there's Tim Anderson, who I used to visit him quite often. He helped me out in becoming a counter and learning my hawks. you could see all the way down here if you were ever, and this is however it was listed officially. So Deb was probably working with Peter as Peter became one of our counters. Um, and then Rosemary's with Sally here, Dave Dorney. And so, even if you have a few hours, I'm not going to show up here, but there's hours here. Look, this is 500 hours. This is 0. So if you filled in for us, you took a couple hours when we could get coverage, you're on here. It's just not showing. All right, so let me show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to end up taking, let's just use Rosemary. Rosemary has been with Tony, and she's also been with Sally. Now, we're supposed to only have one official counter on as the official counter. So here's what I did. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I ended up splitting Tony and Rosemary's hours when they were together. I gave her half and him half, and then she's on her own, and then she's also with Sally. I split their hours, so they each got 4 of the 8. And when you do that, and I add the half counts on there, she goes all the way up to just about where Bob Stewart is, about 3,100 hours. And if you were to count them separate, which I don't know if we should really do that because it's like double counting, like we have double the official counter hours. Look, all of this is just for our fun and fascination, so we don't have to stress too much about this. Let me give one more example of just some of the things that I did, and I'll show you this last graph. Tom, Dick, well, Tom and then Sally is here, but as we know from Jean and Nancy and Chi and Marion, often when one of them's there, the other, if they're a couple. So I just ended up putting the Dicks together and Tom and Sally together. I don't know if that's right. It doesn't really matter, but often they're supporting one another. So if Sally's counting, Tom might be there, or if Tom's there, Sally might be there helping to spot. So right or wrong, I just took a guess, and so like Rosemary and Sally had a total of 8 hours, so I put 4 hours on there. So this is the total for the Dicks here. All right, so if I did that, it's going to make our graph a little less cumbersome. So if we looked at the individuals for official hours, now we can have the 3,404 total hours. Actually, this is probably changed because we already started counting for the fall 2022 season. So these were up into the summer. And so when I consolidated all of the numbers, like Rosemary, all of her numbers are together, just about up with Bob and her are about the same, and they're both chasing Rocco. Now, if you were to count Rosemary's hours when she was counting with someone else, I think she would probably have more than anyone. And the funny thing is, if I ask her, I'm like, Rosemary, how long have you been here? Oh, I don't know, not that long. She's been such an integral part of this organization, as have all of these people and all of the people that aren't listed on here. Remember, these are just the official counters. This does not talk about the spotters or the observers or everyone else that helps at the Hawk Watch. So these are just the numbers that I got around to, and I'm out of time, so I'm going to end here. But as I get more time, I'll do a little bit more analysis, but it's all just for fun. But I do want to show these two happy gentlemen. Here's the new owl that I was talking about, Randy Flement and Bob Stewart, and that's the new owl. And I'm going to put that on the timeline. Why? Because I'll remember, hey, that's around the time that we got the owl with the new eyes that Randy took so much time with, and the new feathers down here to be a better attractant for our raptors that go by. And you could see everyone loves this work that Randy's done. Look, Bob's excited to just be holding this. I wouldn't want to hold this. Raptor might come down and hit Bob in the head. But regardless, I hope you gained something out of this. Again, if there's other dates that you know of that can go on our timeline, it's a work in progress. And email them to me, or give me a call, or meet me up at the Hawk Watch. Here's my email. And thank you for sticking through this. I hope you enjoyed it. If not, You don't have to watch the others, but I'll make more of these, and I'm just trying to get the history down and some of our numbers. So thank you very much.